Game begin.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome. And well, today I'm going to talk about Angular Elements. I don't know if everybody knows what it is, but this is something that I'm very excited to talk about. Well, first of all, I want to introduce a little bit myself because, self-publishing, it's always good. So I have a small consultancy company in Barcelona. When I mean small, we are very, very small. We are 5 people only. I'm also an Angular GDE, a Google Developer Expert. That means that I do work for Google, but Google are not paying to me. So the worst of this relationship. But and I also have a small project called Videoler, which is a video player for Angular. Hopefully, next year I will release it with Angular Elements. And I think that is going to be awesome. So let's talk about web components and Angular with web components. So if none of you know what web components are, which if you are developing JavaScript today is going to be a little bit difficult because it's something that it's quite popular right now, I'm going to make a small introduction. So the definition, extract and fund the MDM. It's web components are a set of web platform APIs that allow you to create new custom, reusable, encapsulated HTML tags to use in web pages and web apps. Blah, blah, blah. So the truth is that there are 4 APIs, which are it is not only one API to create the web components. There are actually several APIs. Custom elements, which allows you to create new DOM elements. That means create your own tags. Also the shadow DOM, which allows you to encapsulate the styles. ES modules, which it is what we use today in mostly all the popular and modern web frameworks to use to reuse JavaScript modules across projects or in the same project, and also HTML and templates and the slots, which allows us to define the markup fragments, which are which is this part of HTML that you can reuse along the project. So define an element. It's well, not an element, a new web component. It's very easy. We can actually try this directly on the browser. So let me show you. I can just go here and create this class. And now I can just define the custom element with the custom elements API. And we defined a new hello world component. Hello world web component, which is not the same. And then we can just create this element. And we can append the element to the body, as we are doing here. And now we can just use this web component, which it's going to be very, very easy. So to create a web component, as you can see, it's very easy. But to use more complex or the bigger features of you need more features, or you have to write complex components. Maybe this is going to be more tricky. So I will not recommend you to use directly this thing. You can use other frameworks like Polymer or that kind of things if you want to create web components directly. But just to show you how it is actually pretty easy. So in Angular, Well, if we define an element this way, we can define a component in Angular. How many Angular developers here in the room? OK, half, maybe more. And Polymer web components developers? Not so much. OK. Maybe I'm going to attract you to the evil side of Angular. So, well, defining an Angular component, as I said, if you actually look at the code, this class here is basically the same thing here. It's exactly the same. The only thing that it's changing is that the code that we have here, the define, where we create the element and so on, that's what we have in the decorator. So the decorator itself is doing that magic underneath. The life cycle, if we compare the life cycles of both frameworks, are very similar. So the connected callback, this is called each time the element is added to the markup, disconnected when it is removed. We have also the attribute changer. And this is very similar to what we have in the Angular life cycle, which we have the ng on init and on destroy, the on changes, and so on. And the templates are kind of similar. This is the HTML templates, where you can just have your template and then iterate inside body, for example, and copy-paste this template here inside the body. And in Angular, we can do that with transclusion, which is the content projection that it's called now. Or we can see that also, for example, with the ng-force. The ng-force grab a piece of template and iterates over it in a loop, that kind of things. So that's pretty similar, too. And even the custom elements API is very similar. So we have the properties, events, attributes, and methods, and this translated to Angular would be input, output, host binding, public functions. So if you are writing web components to write Angular, it's very similar. If you are writing Angular to write the web components, it's very similar. So and so on, as I said. And because Angular is actually very close, the thing is Angular is very close to the HTML spec to create web components. And that's something that was created from the beginning in that way by the Angular team, because they wanted to be as close as possible to the platform, as close as possible to the platform. So if we remember the first slide that I created, where we talk about the custom elements, shutdown, so on, we can see that this is kind of the same that we have in Angular. So we have the components, we have also view encapsulation, we have ng modules, and we have the templates and the content projection. So all of that is very similar. So if we are so close, why not to compile Angular components as web components? And that's why Angular Elements Rob Wormald from the Angular team created the Angular Elements project. And it was added in Angular 6. Now in Angular 7, it's used in production in several apps at Google. So it means that it's stable, but it's still, I think that it's stable, but it's still not as stable as I want to be, because I think that there are some features that are still missing, and that's why we need the IB renderer. But I will talk about that later. So Angular elements. In definition, again, the blah, blah, blah. Angular elements are Angular components packaged as custom elements, a web standard for defining new HTML elements in a framework-agnostic way. So at the end, that means that what we are going to do is when we are going to compile the component, instead of creating Angular code, we are going to create a web component as we did in the first slides in the console log. So right now, what we are going to see today is how to use Angular elements in Angular 7. It cost me a little bit because Angular 7 just has been released very recently, and there was some issues here and there. It's still a little glitchy, I think. But before we start, danger zone. I want to insist it's working. Angular elements is working, but depending on what you want to do, it might not fit for what you are doing. So the example of today is going to be ngx toggle, because we are tired of the checkbox, right? So this toggle is going to be very, very easy. We will define how we want to show the on label, the off label, and that's it. We will be able to define the size of the component, and we are going to create a component with Angular, and we are going to create the same component as a web component with Angular. And the good thing is we are going to use the exact same code. We are not going to change a single line. It's going to be the same component instantiated as an Angular component, and the same code instantiated as a web component. So things that we have to have in mind when we define our new web component, it's first, you have to define your entry components. Your entry components are going to be your web component, your Angular components that you want to export as web components. And also the custom elements schema. So custom elements schema are the schemas that Angular uses to know that this part of HTML markup, it's not Angular. It's probably some web component that it's not a standard code. And you have to use that, because otherwise the compiler is going to complain that it doesn't understand ngx toggle. It will understand an input checkbox, but it will not understand ngx toggle because it doesn't belong to the HTML spec. So first of all, you have to create your component as you always did in Angular. So that means that you are going to define your class with your inputs, outputs, whatever. And then you will define your component with your add component, the declaration. And one important thing is that you don't have to add the selector, because if you define the selector, you are going to have this interest conflict. So Angular will create a selector ngx toggle for you, and then you will define this component as a web component, and you will add another component that it's a web component ngx selector ngx toggle too. So that will mean that you will have two components called ngx toggle, and then you will have a collision. So when you are creating a web component, you don't have to create the selector, to add the selector, because you will add that when you define the web component. We will see that. So more things that you have to have in mind. It's you have to set the view encapsulation shadow DOM, which has been introduced in Angular v7. I think that it was in v6, but it was like not public. But I think that it was introduced officially in v7. And that will create for us the shadow root, where we are going to set all the host element and so on. So that's important that you have to use Shadow DOM if you want to export the component as a web component. So now we are going to talk about the slots. Who knows what are the slots API here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not too many. Well, it's not very famous. It's pretty new. And if you worked with web components, you probably heard about it. If you don't, you probably don't need to use it because the frameworks usually have their own, way to use slots or to emulate the slots in some way. But the HTML slot element, let's go to the blah, blah, blah again. It's part of the Web Components technology suite. And it's a placeholder inside a web component that you can fill with your own markup. So that's kind of content projection that we have right now in Angular. Would let you create separate DOM trees and present them together. So let's see how it works, because with text, it's not the same. So the truth is that slots are very cool. And you can just create, for example, this element. And you say, for example, OK, I have this span slot title with these HTML templates here. And inside our template, we have this slot name title. And what this thing is going to do, it's because name here and slot here are the same, this HTML templates code is going to be moved here to be placed inside here. So the same thing for description. So this is very similar to what we have right now in Angular with the content projection. And this is the API that the W3C have created to have this content projection on the web components. And I think that it's very cool because we can use it right now also in Angular v7 because it is supported. So slots in Angular, it's that in your component, you just add the slot name with the name ID. And in your parent, you can define name and the name ID that you want to match. So for example, in our toggle component, we'll have our ngx toggle with this slot on and slot off. And we can, for example, place a class, not the text inside of it, but we can place a class, and that will create a before. And that before is going to be projected to the Angular element that is inside. So it also works with pseudo elements. It's not working only with elements, or inner HTML content, but also with pseudo elements, which is very cool. And then that will be projected to these slots here. And this is actually working today on Angular v7 and Angular Elements. I think that this is a very cool feature to have because it is aligned with the platform, which is one of the goals of the Angular team and the Angular Elements. And it, just. Oh, so let's see the demo. So the demo, it's these two checkboxes, okay? And we can create this web component. As you can see, when I click on a console log is emitted, telling me the value of the toggle. And if I create a web component, you will see that this element is created outside the root app. This is the application root of the Angular. But we created a new toggle element outside the root. And this is actually a web component. This is, even if it has the same signature, as we can see here, you will see that it doesn't have the ng content. That's because it's not inside Angular. And this is a web component created. And when I click on this one, instead of saying that it has been emitted from Angular, it will tell us that it has been emitted from web component. So if I show you the code, I'm going to put a little bit bigger. So what we do first is on app component, we define our custom elements. We do that with this create custom element API that it's given by Angular Elements package. So we have this toggle component, which is our class or web or Angular component that we created. Okay, this toggle component, and then we create our toggle component, and with the custom elements API, we define that this new ngx toggle. And then when we click this button here, this create web component button, we just create plain HTML. That's it. We are not going to do anything else. We just can create elements and set attributes, just add list, whatever, and then you can add an event listener, because this event listener is actually an output. Okay, so Angular transforms these outputs to custom events. And because of that, we just have this transformed this custom event, this output to a custom event that can just lead us to our emit from web component. This exact same code, we can use it inside Angular. I mean, it is the same component instantiated by Angular with the custom elements schema. And what we are adding here is just elements. This is not an Angular component. This is an element. This is the same thing as we did input, type, text, change, on change, input. So this thing, sorry. This thing is for Angular in terms of code generation is the exact thing like this one. Okay, so this is I think that this is great. This is amazing. We can just create libraries of web components and use it inside Angular as web components. But then we can just export this thing to being used with plain JavaScript or Vue.js or React, whatever we want. And that's it. So then we just append this to the body, and because it's outside the main tree, it still works because it's completely independent from the Angular change detection and the Angular tree and all that fancy things that has Angular. This is just a completely new element that you created, and it works independently without Angular at all. And that's the unlimited hype, right? So how are we on time? I think that I'm going to be short on time. So let me show you a little bit more of the code, because I have time just for once in my life when I give a talk. So as we've seen in the slides, this thing here is very important. If you remove this custom elements schema, what is going to happen is that Angular is going to tell you that it doesn't understand ngx toggle. So you have to add this custom elements schema to tell Angular that it might be there some HTML tag elements that you are not going to understand, but don't freak out. They are cool, they are good. Just trust me, everything is going to work. Again, we have the same thing with the spans. And we have also these inputs, which we can set the size, the width, and the height. These are regular inputs. And this is, in Web Components Translator, will be the attributes. And there is also attribute change detection. So what I did in the code is that the template, you will see that it's very easy. So I just have an input checkbox, which is hidden. You are not seeing it, but this actually it's an input checkbox. And we have styles. And depending of the inputs received, we will update the styles when the component is initialized. That means on the connected callback. On changes also, which means on the attribute changes callback. And also when we click on the switch, where we will emit with the output, which is going to send a custom event. And then on the update styles, we just generate a new object that it's going to calculate the sizes and so on. So the cool thing about this is that, let me show you the demo again. So you can just go here, and you know that we have these attributes, right? So that means that in the same way that I can do this thing, I can just go here to the HTML, edit this thing as HTML, and you're not going to see anything, right? Better. So we are going to edit this thing. And this is going to update the styles of the inner component. So because what this thing is doing is that it's the engine changes is being called, but actually it is not engine changes. It is the attribute changes of the web components spec. And it will update the styles and set up everything inside our shadow root. So other cool stuff that we can see here. I'm going to be short on time at the end. So other stuff that could be cool here, for example, is that we have these slots. And when you click here on the slot, it's going to select the HTML slot for you. That's pretty cool of Chrome. This Chrome implementation is pretty cool. It's going to tell you where is this code. And we have also the encapsulated styles. So we have, these are the source mappings, and we have all the styles here that are on the app. And that's it. You can just, as I said, you can just go here and again, what we are changing here, it's just HTML code. It's not Angular at all. So that's the cool thing here. I can just set this thing, for example, 80, and this thing to 40, and this to 30. And yeah. So everything works. Okay. And that's it. You have a repo. I will put the URL, so if you want to play with this thing on your own house, you can do it. So just some final notes. To this demo, it's created with the amazing Ivy renderer. And to use the Ivy renderer, you just have to go to your config app, which is going to be this one. And here, enable Ivy, OK? Set to true. That's it. And that's how you change the old renderer to the new Ivy renderer, which is going to be incredibly performant, and the size of the app is going to be much, much lower. More stuff that I found in the way, there were some changes in document register element package, and with Angular 7 is now failing, so I had to fix document register element dependency to 181. If you are going to use Angular elements for any reason, you probably have to do this thing until they fix document register element dependency, which is, by the way, maintained by some guy. No, this is not part of Google, and the guy is asking for money, so you can just send him $5 to buy him a beer or whatever. Some resources, web components. If you want to learn about web components, I recommend you to go to webcomponents.org. MDN, developer-mozilla.org, that it has a lot of very good information about web components, custom elements, custom events, slots, and so on. Web fundamentals, where they have a couple of good read-ups about it. Polymer project, if you want to just develop with web components and you don't want to use any frameworks, just go for it. Great project. They released version 3 like a few, I don't know, maybe 1 month ago, 2 months ago, something like that. About the Angular elements, you have the official website. There is some demos and so on to practice there, and well, all the documentation. Today's demo, this is the link with the NGX toggle. I will not recommend you to use that in production. Just don't use it. It's not tested at all. I will recommend you also this Angular 5A's video, which they talk about Angular elements on version 6, I think. But it is pretty good example about how to use and how to start. It's a quick start with Firebase and Angular elements. Pretty good video. And also the Angular repository, where you are going to find between the issues a lot of information. Preparing this demo, I had 2-3 errors in the way to finish it, and all the information about how to fix it, I found it on Angular repository. So I will recommend you to take a look to it. Just search for Angular elements on the issues, and you are going to learn a lot. Because all the Angular team is talking there, so it's always very good to learn from the guys that did the actual framework, you know? And thanks so much. That's all. I'm going to be outside on the room, for what's the name? The Google booth. So you will find me there. If you have any questions, just go there and poke me. OK? Thank you.